Yes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Madeline McGillivray, and I am the project manager for my team. Tonight, I'll be covering our work to help parks groups in New York City build park management capacity on behalf of our client, Friends of Morningside Park. So I'll begin with an overview of the project. I'll introduce the client. I'll then outline our methodology and our key findings. I'll then delve into our recommendations for the client and summarize our work throughout the semester. So first, some overview. This is a map of Morningside Park. It is a 30-acre park right next to us in Harlem. It's one of 4 designated historic Harlem parks. The client, Friends of Morningside Park, which I will abbreviate FMP, has been taking care of the park for over 40 years on an informal and totally volunteer basis. They do things like seasonal plantings, they have youth gardening programs, and they do other maintenance and program activities. And they're at this point where they're seeking to build management capacity to make the relationship to the park formal. And they're looking to do this by securing a license agreement, which would give them stronger marketing, fundraising, and operational opportunities. So the need to build park management capacity was no more telling than when we visited the park. This is what we found. So as you can see in photos 1 and 2, trash is just vastly undermanaged. Image 3 highlights a lot of safety issues like this broken fence near the pond. And then image 4 reflects personal safety concerns resulting in these really loud and smelly diesel generators that the NYPD put there after recent stabbings. So what has our role been? So our role has been to provide the client with the building blocks to improve park management capacity, which hopefully culminates in this license agreement with the city to maintain the park. And this would create obviously a thriving green space and speak to the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic, environmental, and social good. So a little bit first about license agreements. So the license agreement, again, is a legal contract signed between a parks group and the New York Department of Parks and Recreation. So it elevates this purely volunteer effort into a public-private partnership. The parks group becomes the licensee and is viewed as the city's official partner for the park. So as an example here, the Central Park Conservancy has a license agreement and hosts film festivals and gets to keep those revenues. So that's something that results from a license agreement. So the power of a license agreement is evident in Central Park, where the conservancy that's taking care of the park is really viewed as the jewel of public-private partnership arrangements in the urban park management universe. So with the power of the license agreement, the conservancy raises up to 85% of the park's funding needs and uses those to maintain the beautiful premises of the park. Their trash and recycling collection system, in contrast to Morningside Parks, is designed to prevent rodent presence and is meant to be for all year use. And another example is the Bethesda fountain. So it's been featured in movies like Elf and Home Alone 2. It has its own Instagram hashtag and it draws a lot of foot traffic to the park, which then people go and pay money and use the cafes, which basically just is really good for revenues for the parks group. Again, they get to keep all of those funds. So naturally the client, FMP, wants the license agreement so that they can have those same kinds of opportunities. So now I'll quickly discuss our methodology. We worked with a list of parks with license agreements, and we added parks to the list that we felt would be relevant. We developed this list of metrics for parks and parks groups to understand the landscape of urban park management. As you can see here, this helped us narrow down a smaller number of parks with similarities to Morningside that we then distilled into these 4 key factors on the right that are integral to building park management capacity. So a strong and thoughtful organizational strategy, a multi-channel fundraising strategy, robust partnerships with community buy-in, and an effective marketing strategy. So the most extensive part of our capstone was field research. So as you can see from these logos, we interviewed board members from 7 different parks groups. We interviewed over 70 park users. We interviewed local institutions, advocacy groups, and city officials. And this also helped us to identify 5 case studies on best practices in building management capacity. So with all of that, we were able to deliver a list of short, medium, and long-term recommendations to the client in order for them to build towards management capacity and stakeholder support to ultimately try to secure a license agreement. With our research, we quickly realized that a license agreement also comes with really hefty legal obligations that include strict operating and reporting guidelines, both monthly and annual, multi-million-dollar insurance requirements, and significant staffing and equipment needs to take care of the premises and the programming. So all of this obviously requires significant funding, a really strong organization, and really what we're calling a financial powerhouse of a board, which can take so many years to build. So it took Central Park over 20 years to sign a license agreement. And this is one reason why out of 1,900 green spaces in the city, only 25 parks have license agreements. So given our research, we created this roadmap. It delivers short, mid, and long-term recommendations. It's the combination of these foundational needs, these organizational funding and partnership and marketing strategies to build the client's capacity to ultimately apply for the agreement. So here is our very high level roadmap. In the interest of time, I'm going to discuss a few of the short-term actionable recommendations that we have for the client. So ultimately, we'll deliver the completed roadmap with more specific recommendations and a list of best practices to the client. So recommendation 1. Outreach to local institutions. So necessary for securing a license agreement is the Parks Group's ability to show the New York City Parks Department that they have consistent and committed partners who are willing to follow through and support them both monetarily and in gift in kind. So FMP really must identify these local institutions for skill sharing. So Columbia University is a great example. Past attempts to receive funding from Columbia have proven challenging. So we recommended a bit of a change in the approach that FMP can take, namely reaching out to Columbia for more specific, tangible resources like office space or a partnership in an annual 5K, for example. Other potentially great institutional partners include hospitals like Mount Sinai, Presbyterian, and even churches. So St. John the Divine is a great example. We also recommend that FMP attend community board meetings on a regular basis as a park ambassador. So this would give them the opportunity to really showcase the needs of their park users to the community board and really get their attention and really be visible. So finally, we recommend that FMP, excuse me, set up regular table at the weekly farmers market. They would organize volunteers and just hand out info about their organization and really be there to answer questions from the community. Again, this is about increasing visibility. So recommendation 2, conduct an internal audit. As they say, you can't manage what you can't measure. So the next step for FMP is to really just assess all of their sources of revenue, building a percentage breakdown model, considering the reliability of their current revenue sources, and the ability to develop and maintain those revenue sources over time. Essentially, they're calculating their overhead costs and their time spent in fundraising and just making sure that they're not creating a negative impact on return on investment. And the photo on the right is of several FMP board members. So their next step would be to identify gaps in board expertise. And then from there, solidify committees. So who's the program expert? Who's a socially connected member who can help with intros and business, fundraising and speaking engagements and be front facing? Who's the fundraising expert? Who's the marketing expert on the board? And then from there should identify the potential board members to recruit. So pinpointing committed and passionate people with specific skills and strong connections that'll help FMP achieve its goals. So the third and final short-term recommendation that we have is for them to establish a plan. So FMP can utilize all these free resources in the community, like students from Columbia's nonprofit management program that could help them with a 5-year plan. They can approach Columbia for pro bono consulting on an updated park master plan, which is currently 20 years old. They can collaborate with the Sumani Net Impact Program to work on a website optimization strategy. And then FMP really needs needs to identify priority hires. So when they do have the funding, who are they going to hire first? So pictured here is Dan Garodnick when he was ED of Riverside Park Conservancy, and he's talking at a park event, and council member Mark Levine and former council member Helen Rosenthal are also pictured watching on. So this really speaks to the power of having a strong executive director as a first hire, and also the power of local electeds in partnerships. So in summary, our work serves as a tool, not just for the client, but really for all other small parks groups. We've demystified the very complex landscape of park management, and we've delivered these short, medium, and long-term recommendations for successful park management. And we hope that the end product of this research is a body of work that helps FMP and other small parks groups really build their management capacity and ultimately increase their capacity to provide the myriad crucial sustainability benefits that they're meant to. Thank you so much, and I will take questions.
I just had a quick question. I was wondering if you go into a little bit more detail on why it's been so hard to engage with Columbia in the past.
We received this question in the midterm as well. I don't think I can speak to it specifically. I think it's a combination of a lot of factors that I actually, unfortunately, don't really have an answer, but it's a really wonderful question.
So on that note, so instead of, you mentioned a lot of really awesome kind of institutional and even student groups to partner with, I'm wondering where and you also talked about this briefly, the community outreach portion and sort of like the grassroots support in the community and even local businesses that are owned by, local community members, where that kind of fits into your short, medium, long-term plan.
Great question. That's definitely a short-term, like step one, right? So the idea with partnerships is that before you have funding, before you have someone to help with funding, before you can have salaried positions, really utilizing all of the resources in the community and getting folks to understand who you are. And when we did these 70 interviews of park goers, half of them didn't know who Friends of Morningside Park were. Then, of course, they couldn't advocate for Friends of Morningside Park to get the license agreement. So I think that those local partnerships really fit in as like step one. And FMP does have a lot of great volunteer efforts that they run, and they are really loved within the community. So this is definitely, a really great resource to use. Yeah. Thank you.